guys, so I am coming down with something. I'm terrified it's the flu, but we'll get through it. But before it becomes full-fledged, I really wanted to film this video for you guys this week specifically because it is Eating Disorder Awareness Week. So I wanted to do a video on it, even though I haven't been comfortable talking about it in the past because it's something that I have never personally experienced. But a viewer, one of you guys, reached out to me and wanted to share your story in any way that you could, if it would help me in any way. And I was like, I'm doing this video anyway. Let's do it together. I'm also going to be talking about the stigma around eating disorders and some myths, and hopefully spreading a little bit more awareness of eating disorders during this week. This video is sponsored by BetterHelp. It is a counseling service that I personally use and I've been using for probably, I think, 7 months now at this point. I don't even know. It's been so long and I love it. It can be a more affordable way to receive counseling and you don't even have to leave your house, which is my favorite part about it. Within 24 hours of creating your account, you will be matched with a licensed counselor. And if for some reason you don't like your counselor, it's really easy to change. You go through a questionnaire when you're creating your account and you can put in specifications for things like if you want them to be LGBT friendly or religious or female. One of the best benefits I think to this site is that you can schedule as many appointments with your counselor as their schedule allows, and if in between sessions you want to text them or email them or message them on the website, you can do that and they'll just respond to you when they get around to it. And that's really cool because you could be at constant communication with your counselor if you're going through a hard time and maybe they're not available for a session. You can just, spew all your thoughts in the messages. I've done that before. So if you feel like you're struggling in any way, I encourage you to check out BetterHelp. I will have a link to it down below. I do want to point out that this video might be triggering to those of you who have suffered with an eating disorder or are going through that, because I will be using some language around eating disorders and, sharing this subscriber's story, so it might be a little triggering for you guys. I'm not going to be graphic or anything like that, or say anything graphic, or show any imagery or anything like that that could trigger you. I just wanted to throw out a trigger warning, just in case. So the viewer that reached out to me is named Caitlin, and she has suffered with anorexia and orthorexia, and has also experienced inpatient treatment and outpatient treatment, so I'll share a little bit of her story with those. She was so kind enough to share her story with me and allowed me to use her name and story in this video, so thank you so much to Caitlin. So I'm going to start by debunking a few myths about eating disorders and hopefully spread awareness around them. The first one is one that Caitlin actually pointed out to me, is that eating disorders are purely a way to control one's appearance. She says, yes, body image does play a role. The food restriction is motivated by lots of factors. Poor self-esteem and fear of gaining weight are some, but it's deeper than surface level. A lot of the time, restriction is a coping mechanism. And this is very true. It's often not always about body image, even though it does seem to be centered around it. It's a way to feel in control, and it is a coping mechanism for a lot of people. Caitlin also said, you feel lost, but you're tricked into feeling in control. So although weight and controlling your outer appearance and, restricting what you eat or eating too much can be a way that feels like you're controlling something, but in reality, it can be a very dangerous disorder. An obvious myth is that if you have an eating disorder, that means you're thin, or you can tell if someone has an eating disorder by looking at them. Caitlin pointed out in her experience that if you don't look sick enough, you often don't get the help that you need, which is very dangerous. It disregards what's going on mentally, and it treats it more as a medical condition that we need to get her calories now, she's too thin, etc., etc., and it focuses less on the mental disorder, what's going on in their brain. I see a lot of comments on YouTube that are scary. I know there are some YouTubers out there that may be physically looking a certain way. I don't want to name names by any means, but I see a lot of comments in their comment sections, and it's scary to me how they project this disorder onto them. Even though you may think it's obvious, you don't really know. Like, no one really knows. And I think it's inappropriate, especially on the internet, to comment something like that. Even if they are going through something like that, an eating disorder or whatever, it's not your business or your place. If they have chosen not to open up about that, then it's not your place to comment about it. Commenting on their body is definitely not going to help them in any way, shape, or form if they are experiencing an eating disorder. Another myth is that all eating disorders are restrictive disorders or have to do with losing weight. Binge eating disorder is often stigmatized. It was added to the DSM, and it is a legitimate eating disorder, and I think people overlook it more because they are unhealthy in another way. They might have gained a lot of weight, which in fact that is an eating disorder. It's not always about losing weight or looking thin or restricting. Another myth is that eating disorders only affect women. In fact, 1 in 10 people who have eating disorders are male. And men make up to 40% of those diagnosed with binge eating disorder. And the last myth is only eating healthy foods. Caitlin reassures that you cannot live on a low-fat diet, a low-carb diet, low-sugar diet for a long period of time. That's just not sustainable to our bodies. We need those macros to survive, and carbs are what fuels your brain. So your brain will not function properly if you eat low carbs or no carbs. That's for an extended period of time, of course. A lot of people do these fad diets or these, cutting out carbs completely diets to lose weight, but in reality, you're only losing weight in the beginning. As soon as you start eating that macro again, which you need to do, you will start gaining weight again. So it's really not an effective way to lose weight, and it can actually lead into dangerous obsessive behaviors, which is something that I have experience with. I did not experience a full-fledged eating disorder. I didn't let it get to that point, but I did do a video on my body image. I will link it up here. It's an old video, but I kind of talked more about it. I'll touch on it now. Basically, I downloaded a certain app. I'm not going to name the app. And every time I see it now, it's a little bit triggering, and I cringe every single time from it because it caused very dangerous obsessive behaviors in me. Basically counting calories. I would only allow myself 1 carb a day, and that meant 1 slice of bread, 5 crackers, that was it for the day. A cereal, eating some cereal, that was it for the day. The rest had to be like fruits and vegetables or like low calorie items. And that was really scary for me. I lost weight, a lot of weight. So it wasn't like dangerous, but at the time I was really restrictive. I was exercising an hour every single day, which isn't necessarily unhealthy, but I was doing it too much. I didn't have a rest day. I never allowed myself to eat enough carbs to fuel those exercises. And this went on for about a whole summer, and then finally I was like, you know what, this needs to stop. I deleted the app. I was like, this is too much. I'm tired of not enjoying food and not enjoying my life. So Caitlin shared with me her inpatient story experience, which is basically where you go into a facility and they give you treatment, they give you foods, they don't tell you the nutrients or the calories that you're eating, which she points out can be really helpful to those who have eating disorders, because if you're told that or that information, you can obsess over that information. She says this experience can also be really dangerous to a lot of people who are suffering an eating disorder though, because eating disorders can be very competitive. You want to be as thin as the next person or thinner than the people that are also in your ward. What I found interesting with Caitlin's story, and also I watch another YouTuber who talks about eating disorders and her experience with anorexia. We'll link her video or her channel over here. I highly recommend checking her out. They talk about getting rewarded with food. Like if you ate or if you gained a certain amount of weight, you were given rewards such as going on a walk or going outside or having family visit. And Caitlin said that this can cause a lot of people to relapse because they're purely gaining the weight or changing their physical changes to gain those rewards, and they'll relapse right back into their old behavior once they've had that reward. She also said that sometimes the inpatient facility can be damaging to your mental health because you forget what real life is. A lot of the girls that she was with would be in there for months and months, and they started to adjust to that life instead of realizing that that's not reality and that you have to eventually go back out into the real world. Something else that I learned through her story and Mary Rose's story, the YouTuber I mentioned, is it's not just about gaining the weight and then, oh, I'm fine and healthy now. You actually experience side effects to gaining this weight, and it's very uncomfortable. She says that it feels awful. You feel huge, bloated, there's night sweats, and you're out of control, but it's the only way. She says that your body recovers faster than your mind recovers, so that's why there is a lot of relapsing in recovering from an eating disorder. Eventually, Caitlin was discharged because it ended up not being a healthy environment for her anymore because it was so competitive, so she did gain enough weight to be discharged. So Caitlin's actually from the UK, and the treatments that she had experienced in her recovery of her eating disorders were CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy, both in group and one-on-one with a counselor, dialectical behavioral therapy, increased food intake, and occupational therapy such as eating out in cafes, meal prepping, and portion size classes. So Eating Disorder Awareness Week is actually sponsored by NEDA, which is the National Eating Disorder Association. I will have a link to their YouTube channel down below and a YouTube video talking about warning signs and symptoms of an eating disorder. So if you want to gain more information and education about it, you can check that out. And like I said, if any of this was triggering for you or you feel like you need to talk to someone, check out BetterHelp's website down below. Eating disorders have the highest mortality rate of any mental illness, and up to 30 million Americans will experience it at least once in their lifetime. So hopefully I did this in a way that was respectable enough. If you feel comfortable sharing your story or anything that you'd like to share about spreading awareness about eating disorders, whether it's debunking myths, talking about the stigma, things like that, if you have experience with that and feel comfortable, please leave that in the comments to help further educate myself and others out there. So please also leave some requests for future psychology videos of topics you'd like me to cover down below, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.